As we all know, life isn't always delicious. And one of the only constants we have in life is that things are always changing. Life can be a beautiful mess of twists and turns. And as we grow through each unique season of life, our needs change, our goals change, our priorities change, and our responsibilities change. And sometimes when the really hard stuff shows up, as it inevitably will, we can find ourselves lost and without a clear direction. Sometimes that can happen when we've had a huge life transition, like a divorce or a diagnosis, or we realize that our babies are all grown up and ready to be out on their own. And sometimes it can be a subtle or not so subtle restlessness that tells us we're ready to step into a bigger, bolder, more authentic version of ourselves. But one thing is for sure, we can't transition into what's next happily until we get really clear about what's weighing us down, what lights us up, and what we truly want when our soul whispers its truth. Happy is Not an Accident is a guided journal created to bring you back home to your truest self, to remember who you are, and to give you a safe place to explore and reflect on where you've been, where you really want to go, and who you want to become now. With deep, inspiring prompts, thought-provoking questions, and powerful exercises to help you excavate your most authentic self, Happy is Not an Accident will be the daily ritual that you look forward to as you step into this next awesome chapter of life. Give yourself the gift of self-reflection and create this beautiful life of yours on purpose and with intention. Get your copy or one for somebody that you love at lifeisdelicious.ca/happy. Hey, beautiful friend, welcome back to Life is Delicious. Today we are doing something a little bit extra special. I am doing a Father's Day episode, and I actually am super excited because I've got actually one of my very favorite people in the whole world here with me today. And unfortunately, he's not here with me in person, but as you might be able to guess, it's my dad. And his name is Burton, and we are going to start a new little series called Coffee with Burton that we'll do once a month. And it'll just give you a little bit of a window into our relationship, and he's got a ton of wisdom to share. So we're just going to have a really great conversation, and I hope you enjoy it. Hey, Dad, nice to have you here.
Well, it's nice to be here.
Happy Father's Day, by the way.
Thank you, dear.
So we've been talking, as we do all the time. For most of you that don't probably know much about our relationship, my dad and I have kind of been armchair philosophers as long as I can remember. And we will sit up into the wee hours of the morning and talk about all kinds of things, spirituality and gratitude and philosophy and just all kinds of great possibilities and ideas. So we were talking the other day about a concept that we talk about quite a lot, actually, and it's called show-through talents. And I love show-through talents, and they're the kind of thing that you didn't learn and you didn't earn. It's something that you were born with. And my dad and I are both very super-duper creative people. So today I wanted to talk to him a little bit about his show-through talent, and that is his artistic ability. So, Dad, what do you think about show-through talents? Obviously, you found yourself as a young man realizing that you had this talent, that you just knew that you could foster that and hone it. So when did that start for you?
Well, it's funny because I didn't intend to be an artist of any kind, but I ended up taking a course, commercial sign writing, and that kind of got the whole thing started. And I had some staff. I had one fellow that was an incredible cartoonist, and he worked for me. And then one day he decided to go on to some company down in California. And now I had all these customers, and I didn't have any way to have somebody to do the work. And we just thought about that for a minute, and we said, well, I'm going to give it a shot, and I have to take over and do it myself because we've got customers waiting in the wings. So the first few times was pretty scary, but quickly realized that it's something you should have been doing long ago or before. And it just all of a sudden happened, and I didn't have any choice. So I hopped in the saddle and started doing the artwork that we needed to do in my shop, and it changed my whole life. It changed the dynamic of how I worked. It changed a lot of things. And it also, what was really also interesting was that all of a sudden my business started to make money because I could start soliciting that kind of work and knowing that we could put it together and do it.
Isn't that something when we have those moments where, it's not a planned thing, but we just, life kind of has an agenda and says, here you go, you can do this. And so you step up to the challenge, and it's amazing the things that we can actually accomplish when we rip the Band-Aid off and give it a shot.
That's a fact, yeah. I've always felt that I could do just about anything. I mean, that was just kind of how I was brought up, and knowing that there were no limitations. If you wanted to do something and you wanted it badly enough, you could somehow make it work. That's how I got into the sign business in the first place, because that's really a creative business and it's an artistic business. But it's a little bit different from freelance artists, to be a freelance artist. It's hard to explain, but all of a sudden one day you just realize that, hey, this is you and you can do this, and we never really looked back after that. Once you understand that you have this ability and that you can go for it, good or bad, and then you foster that and you get better at it because you're working at it. It just changed my life, and I never looked back after that.
Yeah, it's amazing how the resilience factor and of course, when we're trying something new, like we're going to fall on our face every once in a while and we're going to make big mistakes. But unless we actually forge through those mistakes, and I know for sure from watching you in your sign shop and from growing up in that environment, that I know for sure that there were lots of times that you hit huge roadblocks and you were like, well, I got to figure out how to do this. So you would MacGyver it and come up with a new way or design some other kind of gadget that would make it easier. And you just kind of figured it out along the way. And that's kind of the fun part about being a creative person, because over the years, after you do that often enough, you start to really be able to trust in your ability to figure things out.
That's the truth. But I was just thinking when you were speaking there that I almost never looked for a job. I always felt that I wanted to be self-employed, and it's a different mindset altogether, because when you're self-employed, you see all kinds of opportunities that you don't look for when you're an employed person. Because then they employ you and now you're doing that specific job. But all of a sudden the lid comes off and you can go in any direction that you want. And it was really exciting. And after that, it just felt like I never worked a day in my life beyond that.
I love that so much. Yeah. And you know what? I think 100% that's why I am in the position that I'm in now, because I know I was an employee for many years. I had a bunch of different jobs. I worked in the restaurant industry, which I was the boss in that particular. But before that, I had actually worked as a server in lots of restaurants. And I just kind of found that being an employee, for me personally, I felt like I was kind of in a box, because like you say, there's only one hat that you really wear. And as a creative for myself personally, I really thrive when I'm wearing more than one hat, usually 2 or 3 at least. And that's where I shine, right? And I know you're the same way. And I'm sure that a lot of that came from me watching you figure things out and excel at things and try new things, which was awesome.
Yeah, and sometimes the things you try don't work, but as long as you're willing to take a bit of risk and go for it anyway, it's amazing what you can do.
Yeah.
When you just put your mind to it. It's amazing. You surprise yourself and you go, I can't believe I just did that, and it really stretches our abilities. And I think it's too bad when people are afraid to step out on the edge and live on the edge, or just a little bit outside the box, because that's really where your best self is. It's
Yeah,
just outside.
just
Yeah,
outside the comfort zone.
yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah, that's one of the things I like to discuss and bring to light here on Life is Delicious because, if you're not growing and changing and expressing yourself in every single way, there's just so much more joy that you can extract from life when you're kind of taking some of those risks.
I think so. That's how I've basically lived most of my life after that.
Yeah.
Is I didn't need any guarantees. If it looked like it's something that I should be able to do or that was needed doing, you just jump in with all your feet and away you go. And sometimes it collapses, and if you're not afraid of the risk, it's amazing what you can accomplish. We're given these talents. I believe that we're born with a lot of talents and abilities that we aren't even aware of until we need them in our life. And as long as we aren't afraid to accept the fact that we need them and we have this ability, uh, we can go any place, we can do anything. And it's really just about mindset. It's a
Yeah.
bit of a, that's what it really is convincing yourself that you can do this.
Well, and I think what's really interesting is that when you look at it from, and that's why you and I talk about show through talents, because those are the things that generally come really easily to you. And we're taught in society, maybe less today than we were years and years ago, but we were taught in a lot of society that, you need to struggle. And so I know for sure I went through phases where I'm like, well, I can't do that for a living. Like, that's just too easy. Like, I should probably be grinding or hustling or, and that's just the culture that we have been brought up in. And so, now when you look at these things that come naturally to you, like maybe you're an amazing photographer and maybe you have an ability to speak with people that inspires them. Like, it doesn't have to be necessarily painting an art class.
No,
It could be all kinds of things. And you don't even have to do it for a living. Now, you certainly can. But I think when you're given these show through talents, I think one of the most important things you can do to honor yourself is to express them in one way or another.
I absolutely agree with that, because just about everybody has, well, maybe everybody is born with abilities that they never knew they had, because as they're growing up, first of all, there's no slot for that. There's, for your show through talent, if you will. And we're taught to follow the road and not to deviate, because that's going to shake something up. And so we just sort of move those talents and abilities that we have, we stick them in the back burner somewhere. And I talk to people almost every day about, there's people that say, well, I did a lot of artwork before, but I'm just a poor starving artist, and I said, don't ever say that to me again, because there's no such thing as a poor starving anything. That's a mindset right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people that have more than one talent, they'll say, "Well, I'm not a jewelry maker. I'm an accountant, but I just make
Yep.
jewelry on the side." Or I'm a lawyer, but I, teach music lessons on the side. You can be both things. You can be an accountant and a jewelry maker. You can be a lawyer and a music teacher. And if that's something that lights you up and makes you feel good, then you should absolutely do that and own it and speak it out loud. And don't be afraid to go off the beaten path, because that's where all the good stuff is.
That's exactly right. It's amazing once you take that first step. I'm going to say outside the box. That's used a little too much sometimes, but once we do that and realize that it's okay and how it feels, and allow yourself to accept that talent that you have and to nurture it. Man, it can change your life in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and they even say that for people who are able to express play, whether it's a creative endeavor like an art class or learning a new language or taking up a sport like pickleball or something like that, it engages your brain and your senses in a different way. And actually, there's scientific studies that show it actually helps you to live longer.
Oh, I didn't know that, but that sounds like a good idea.
There you go. There you go. Well, I know that one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about this particular topic today is because I just got to thinking the other day. You in your life, you were a sign painter, and then you were a window painter, and you painted murals on various restaurants and hotels and buildings and everywhere. So you had a very diverse career as an artist. But then I know you did a bit of a left turn, and I started to think about it, and I think that really happened in midlife. And that is when you decided to become a caricature artist. And I know I had a little bit of something to do with that. But maybe tell a little bit about that story and how you started leaning into that and then what the next step was.
Well, I was always fascinated by watching somebody be a caricature artist because that's different from being a regular artist. Caricature artist brings out the features and exaggerates them in some ways. Some people go really overboard with it, but it just, even in subtle ways, it's a little bit different kind of likenesses.
Dad, just before you carry on, could you explain just in a really nuts and bolts kind of way what a caricature is for the listeners in case they don't know?
When you look at a person, and we all have features on our faces, particularly faces. Let's talk about that. You recognize a person by the shape of their nose or the shape of their eyes, or if they have a crooked tooth or something. And these little things help you to recognize that person, that exact person. And what a caricature artist does is they take those little features. You learn to see the differences, and so you learn to take those features and exaggerate them and make them front and center so that you instantly recognize the person. And it's really quite a lot of fun to do it, and it's a lot of fun for the people if it's done in good faith and done properly.
Yeah, and if somebody has a bit of a sense of humor, but most people, so for the listeners, if you're not 100% familiar, it's almost like a cartoon likeness of the person with a little bit of an exaggeration on maybe what their features on their face might be that make them recognizable. And sometimes I know for you, it wasn't just the facial features, but that was a part of it. And then you took it even a step further and added in personality stuff. So, yeah, so tell me, let's talk about how you got into that, and was it scary for you to try something that was a little bit that far left of center for you?
Oh, yes, that was scary actually, but my daughter Marnie, who you always knew I kind of wanted to do that or thought about it, and you were working at a place in California, and you sent me a book on how to draw caricatures. And I looked at it, and it was just fascinating. And I think it got me in the right direction to where all of a sudden I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I was working at this really great little restaurant in Los Angeles called Mimi's Cafe. It was a French bistro. And they had a bar that would, go in the front with stools. But, people would come in and sit by themselves and maybe have a bowl of oatmeal or a coffee or breakfast. And there was this one gentleman that used to come in and sit at the very end of the bar. And that was my section. So I can't remember what his name was, but he would bring in his sketchbook and he would just start drawing the staff, and he would draw customers that were sitting next to him, and he would just chat everybody up, and he would have this really cool interaction with people. And I just got to really get to know him and his story, and I thought, holy moly, my dad could do that. And I think that's what inspired me to buy you that book.
It certainly got me going in the right direction. And when I think about getting started in that business, so that was a little bit scary, because it's one thing to be able to do that, and it's another thing to be able to sit out in public and do it in front of a crowd. So I wanted to be able to master this. So I actually sat at home. I sat down on the floor and used my coffee table as a table, and in front of my TV, and I would draw the people on TV, on the commercials, on shows, and I'd draw and draw and draw and draw, because I wanted to learn this until it was second nature and I could do it pretty well. And then I had enough courage to, as a matter of fact, I didn't have the courage. My wife says, by the way, I booked you in to do caricatures at the fall fair. And I went, no, I'm not ready.
Good for her.
Yes, you're ready. So you're booked. You said, you've got to do it. Well, it was very scary the first few times, but it was also so much fun that I knew that I had to do it. And so that was the beginning. And then from there, it just blossomed, and I got phone calls from people. I had did business cards. Tourists would come through. When they're on their way to Vancouver, they're on their way someplace, they'd grab a business card, and I was getting these calls to come in, and it just blossomed.
I know, and I love that Mom actually did that, because she had a way, and you had a little bit of a perfectionism thing where you wanted everything to be absolutely perfect before you would actually start. So I think that was really sweet of her to see that you just needed a little kick in the pants to get going. So tell me about, I know when we talked, you would have some incredible stories of the people that you would draw, and and then people would come back year after year to come to a festival and get their picture done more than once. So can you remember any particular people? Yeah, tell us a few of those stories, because they're super cool.
First of all, when somebody sat down in front of me, I would start off by saying, okay, so what do you do when you're having fun? What do you like to do when you're having fun? We're now down in the park, or we're in a festival, and they're out having fun. And so this is a good question to ask. It also gives you an idea of what the person is all about, and you now have something to relate to them with. It gives you all kinds of answers. They might say, well, I like doing this, or I like doing that, or I like, or
snowboarding, or canoeing, or whatever.
Then I would incorporate that, and I would draw them on a snowboard or whatever they were doing. And some of the stories were really, really quite funny, because you catch them off guard, and they'd say something. You draw that in the picture, and they went, oh, no, I didn't mean that. And of course, that's exactly what they meant. And it was always fun. What was really interesting is that I started to have people come back year after year. And in some cases, there would be a set of 4 or 5 people that were there at the fair. And I didn't think anything of it, but they showed up again next year. And so I said, oh, you guys are back. So I'm doing their picture again and again and again in the year after year. And it was just interesting to see how things changed in their life. And a couple of them had said to me, it's amazing, you're getting better. and I said, really? And it was, well, I had a lot I saved the caricatures from year to year, and it was just really fun because you get to know the people. And that was the most fun I ever did, just trying to make money, I suppose. But I didn't do it. You don't do stuff like that for the money. You do it for the relationship with the people. I drew caricatures of people that didn't even speak a lick of English. And so, I mean, that's just an experience right there. Then another time there was a fellow and a nice looking lady were walking by, and they stopped and looked at my booth, and so they nodded and came in. And I didn't realize till after the fellow sat down and we're talking about things, I didn't realize he was totally blind. And as soon as I realized that, I said, well, he had said, you do a nice job now. I said, how are you going to know? You'll never know whether it's good or not. He said, I'll know. Don't you worry. I'll know. And it was just that kind of relationship with the people. And well, first of all, he was a good sport. And I know that he's a good sport, or he wouldn't have sat down and interacted with me.
Exactly. I think most people that sign up for a caricature have to, have a bit of a sense of humor, because that's the whole point, is you're trying to capture that moment when they're there, and it's a bit playful for sure.
There was all types of individuals and all kinds of people. It was just the most fun I ever had all my life.
Wow, that's cool. Is there any particular other person besides that guy that really sticks out in your mind that was super fun? Because I know there was a few stories you told me.
Well, yeah, there were some. There was a couple one time came by, and they were kind of giddy. They were a young couple. I'd say mid-20s, and so I said, what do you like to do when you're having fun? She says, I like boating. And then, she looks over at him and he snickers. And then he said, I really like boating. And so I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. So,
reading between the lines.
I'm reading between the lines, and I drew them on a boat with a blanket over them, so that I kept it in good taste.
Of course.
Anyway.
Did you nail it?
Yeah, and they just went bananas when they saw that. They went, because they didn't think that I was getting it right. And next year they came by, who's rolling a baby carriage? I knew it.
You guys have been doing some extra boating, I see.
Yeah. But that kind of thing is just a hoot, and it's just fun. And I had a lady bring by a young girl that was I think a paraplegic or quadriplegic, and she was. I said, so what do you do when you're having fun? I said, that's my opening line. And her mom said they took her up mountain climbing, I said, in her wheelchair, and she said, yep. They pushed her up the hill, and and she just had a fabulous time. So I drew her in this wheelchair with jetpack coming off the back, and it was just, so when I finished, she looked at it and went, yeah, that's the thing. And it just, you make their day doing that, and it's so neat.
Yeah, that's so great. Well, I'm so glad that you ended up doing that and getting to express yourself in that way. And I know we've been talking about you possibly doing some more of that right now, and picking that back up we've just recently moved my dad and my mom into an assisted living, for the listeners that don't know. And it's a beautiful spot, and it's such a lovely place for them to be. And unfortunately, my mom passed in January, so now my dad's there. He's got some great friends, and everybody really appreciates it. So it would be really fun to see you picking that back up.
Well, I'm working on some ideas, and it's going to be fun. I'm here for the rest of my life, so I'm going to make it worthwhile.
I love that. So, Dad, what kind of advice would you give someone who's maybe at a crossroads in their life, and they're maybe in the middle section of their life and needing just a little bit of a push to express themselves or to step into a bigger version of themselves? Do you have any advice for that?
Well, I do know that, because I've been talking to some folks in here, there really is truly a lot of people that have artistic ability. And some of them have a little more artistic ability than others, but they still love to express it. But they're always afraid that they can't spend too much time doing it because they have to make a living or whatever it is, Now, in this place, they're not trying to make a living so much anymore, but when you talk about what they did for a living and so on, everybody wants to have a job because you need a paycheck. But if you can just get past that mindset to the place where you can take the time to do something that you really absolutely love and start to implement that into your life. And once you make a little bit of income from that, you will get it changes your life completely. It really does. You realize that, hey, I have this ability and I didn't even know it. And as soon as they let go of the needing to do something that keeps them in a box, and they get beyond that, all of a sudden the lid comes right off, and your life changes almost immediately.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Dad and I have followed Dr. Wayne Dyer for most of our life, and one of the phrases that he has in one of his books is, "Don't die with your music in you." And that certainly isn't meant to be a morbid reality. What that's meant to be is an inspiration, because whatever your music is, like you say, you could have a story to tell. You could have, you might just be great with children. Maybe you are able to communicate with people and help them to just listen. There's all kinds of different gifts and all kinds of different music for us all to express. And I think if we can allow ourselves the opportunity to step into our creativity and our joy on a daily basis, that everything just gets so much better. Don't you agree, Dad?
I absolutely agree with that. And even if you have a regular commitment, like a job, for example, you can do that. Give yourself a little space to express yourself, just to be true to ourselves. And once you do that, it will change your life.
Yeah, I agree. I remember, I think it was Steven Spielberg. I can't remember, but I remember it was a big screenwriter like that who wanted to create movies. And I think he had to get up at 4:00 every morning and write for 3 hours before he went to his day job. But he committed to doing that so that he could have the life that he dreamed about having. So I think there's always a way to sneak it in, whether you get up an hour earlier or you carve it into your weekend. There's always a space for something that brings you joy and lights you up from the inside out. Dad, I have absolutely enjoyed chatting with you today, and you know what? It's so special to be able to spend Father's Day here with you and have a chat about this stuff. We're going to do a lot more of this, so
I hope so.
Yeah, keep an eye out for some other episodes of Life is Delicious, the Coffee with Burton edition, and we got all kinds of really great things to talk about, so we'll be bringing you more of that very soon. All right, Dad, you have a great rest of the day, and I will talk to you soon. Love you lots.
You bet. Love you too, sweetheart. Thank you.